You know what shocked me most about politics this week? It wasn't the vote itself. It was the moment when I realized that even in today's hyper-partisan world, conscience can still triumph over party loyalty. But here's what nobody's telling you about those 13 Republicans who just delivered the most stunning rebuke to Donald Trump's agenda. Their reasons for breaking ranks will surprise you more than the vote itself. I've been in enough political battles to know when something big is brewing beneath the surface. And what I discovered about these 13 Republicans, their personal stories, their private conversations, their family pressures, it explains everything about why Trump's union busting executive order didn't just fail, it failed spectacularly. Let me tell you about the phone call that changed everything. 3 days before the vote, Representative Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania received a call from his brother, a police officer who's also a union member. What his brother told him about Trump's Schedule F order wasn't about politics, it was about survival. But that's just the beginning of this story. See, everyone's focusing on the political theatrics, the party discipline breaking down, the shock of 13 Republicans voting with Democrats. But they're missing the human element. They're missing the real reasons why these representatives looked at their party leadership and said, "Not this time." I want to take you inside the private meetings, the family dinners, the late night conversations that led to this unprecedented moment. Because when you understand why these 13 broke ranks, you'll understand something much bigger about where American politics is heading. The first thing you need to know is that Trump's team was absolutely confident they had this locked down. Sources close to the White House tell me they counted votes 3 times and came up with the same answer: easy victory. They were so sure of themselves that some administration officials had already started making calls about implementation timelines. But they made one critical miscalculation. They assumed that party loyalty would override everything else: personal convictions, constituent pressure, family concerns, moral qualms. They forgot that these aren't just politicians, they're human beings with their own stories, their own principles, and their own lines they won't cross. Take Representative John Curtis from Utah. His grandfather was a coal miner, union member, died of black lung disease. Curtis grew up hearing stories about what happened to workers when they had no protection, no voice, no power to stand up to bosses who treated them like expendable machinery. When he read the details of Trump's executive order stripping away protections for federal workers, those childhood stories came flooding back. Or consider Representative Nancy Mace from South Carolina. Her district includes thousands of federal workers at military bases and government facilities. 3 weeks before the vote, she held a town hall where a single mother, a federal employee, broke down crying while asking what would happen to her job security if she couldn't advocate for safe working conditions without fear of retaliation. These aren't abstract policy debates when you're looking into the eyes of people whose livelihoods are at stake. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. The breaking point for many of these Republicans wasn't the policy itself. It was how the Trump administration tried to ram it through without proper consultation or consideration of consequences. Representative Tom Reed from New York told colleagues privately that he felt like the administration was asking him to sign a blank check. The executive order was so broadly written that it could have been used to fire federal workers for virtually any reason that could be labeled disloyalty to the administration. That kind of unchecked power made even conservative Republicans uncomfortable. I remember feeling similar concerns during my presidency when advisors would push for executive actions that went too far. The difference is we had robust internal debates. We brought in constitutional scholars, labor experts, Republican critics to stress test our ideas. What these 13 Republicans saw was an administration that had stopped listening to alternative viewpoints entirely. The turning point came during a closed-door Republican caucus meeting 2 days before the vote. According to sources who were in that room, Representative Liz Cheney stood up and said something that echoed through the chamber. "When did we become the party that's afraid of workers having a voice?" That question hung in the air because it forced these Republicans to confront an uncomfortable truth. The Schedule F executive order wasn't about efficiency or draining the swamp. It was about concentrating power in the executive branch at the expense of worker rights and congressional oversight. But here's what really sealed the deal for these 13. Late night conversations with their own staff members, many of whom had family members in federal service, revealed the human cost of what Trump was proposing. These weren't faceless bureaucrats they were talking about. These were neighbors, relatives, constituents who had dedicated their careers to public service. Representative Don Bacon from Nebraska, whose district includes Offutt Air Force Base, heard from dozens of military families whose civilian jobs would be impacted. These were people who had served their country in uniform and continued serving as federal employees. The idea that their job security could be eliminated for political reasons struck him as fundamentally un-American. The personal nature of these decisions can't be overstated. Representative Fred Upton from Michigan received a letter from his own nephew, a federal inspector who ensures food safety at processing plants. The nephew didn't ask for special treatment. He just wanted to know if Uncle Fred thought he should find a different career because speaking up about safety violations might cost him his job under the new rules. These stories multiplied across all 13 districts. Federal employees aren't abstract figures in small government theory. They're real people with families, mortgages, dreams, and a commitment to public service that goes beyond partisan politics. Now, the Trump administration's reaction to losing these votes has been predictably harsh. They've labeled these Republicans as traitors, rhinos, establishment swamp creatures. But here's what they're missing. These 13 didn't betray conservative principles. They upheld them. True conservatism has always included respect for the rule of law, checks and balances, and protection for individual rights against government overreach. When you give any president unlimited power to fire federal workers without due process, you're not conserving anything. You're embracing authoritarianism. The political courage these 13 showed is remarkable when you consider what they're facing. Primary challenges are virtually guaranteed. Dark money groups are already preparing attack ads. Social media harassment has intensified against their families. Yet they voted their conscience anyway. Representative Adam Kinzinger from Illinois summed it up best in a private conversation with colleagues. "I didn't come to Congress to be a rubber stamp for anyone, including a president from my own party. If that cost me my seat, so be it." This vote represents something larger than labor policy or federal workforce management. It's about whether congressional Republicans will maintain any independence from Trump's demands or whether they'll become completely subordinate to his political agenda. The 13 who broke ranks are sending a message that resonates far beyond this single vote. They're saying that party loyalty has limits, that some principles are non-negotiable, that representing constituents sometimes means disappointing party leaders. Looking ahead, this group of 13 could become the nucleus of a broader moderate Republican coalition, willing to check Trump's more extreme impulses. Or they could be marginalized and picked off one by one in primary elections. The outcome will determine whether the Republican Party retains any institutional independence or becomes purely a vehicle for Trump's personal political ambitions. For Democrats, this vote provides both hope and a strategic challenge. Hope because it shows that bipartisan governance is still possible on certain issues, but a challenge because they can't assume these 13 will be reliable allies on other contentious matters. The broader implications for American democracy are profound. If presidents can eliminate job protections for federal workers at will, it fundamentally alters the relationship between political power and government function. Career expertise gets subordinated to political loyalty, and the quality of government service suffers. What these 13 Republicans understood is that good governance requires people who can speak truth to power without fear of retaliation. Whether it's a food safety inspector, an environmental scientist, or a financial regulator, we need federal employees who can do their jobs based on facts and law rather than political considerations. The vote also highlights growing tensions within the Republican Party between those who see Trump as a means to conservative policy goals and those who view him as an end in himself. The 13 who broke ranks clearly fall into the former category. They're willing to oppose him when his actions conflict with their understanding of conservative governance. As this story continues to unfold, Watch for how these 13 handle the inevitable pressure campaign from Trump's allies. Their ability to maintain their independence will be a crucial test of whether any space remains in Republican politics for principled dissent. The courage they showed in this moment proves that even in our polarized era, individual conscience can still prevail over party pressure. That's not just good news for federal workers, it's good news for democracy itself.